Okay, hopefully that worked out okay. Seemed to be okay on the pre-recorded version, but welcome everyone to your fortnightly fast charge on electric vehicles and infrastructure, coast-to-coast EVs. Joined right from the bat here by Eric, my co-host in California, Walter in North Carolina, and our special guest for the evening, Mr. Tyler, the average EV. So welcome, Tyler. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And I believe you're down in Maryland. Is that still correct?
Yep, Maryland. Yep.
Excellent. So we're going to have all kinds of GM model goodness here, from the humble old Bolt EV to the brand new Equinox EV. So we'll have some good stuff to bring you here and there a little bit here. But before we crack on too fast, just your reminder that we are available next day, typically on your favorite audio-only platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, if anyone still uses that. And we'll be typically up by around lunchtime. So around noon Eastern, you should be able to get the audio-only version of this. And if it's up and running okay, then you'll be able to see what's on the next coast-to-coast episode in a fortnight's time with this show page here at plugandplayev.com. And it's just where we kind of put all the replays, any shows that have been in the last few weeks, the things that are coming up in future, and that's where you'll be able to find them. So, without further ado, we'll jump into the news, which is a little bit quiet in the last week or two, but I decided to kind of run with the Alpitronic headquarters opening up, because it's in Walter's neck of the woods, and it potentially leads us on to a bunch of other topics that we can kind of hit. But essentially, Alpitronic, which is a very well-known Italian-based manufacturer of fast chargers, hyperchargers they call them, 400 kilowatt max, some very reliable equipment over in Europe, certainly is kind of the backbone of some of the networks over there. Not something we've seen too regularly, but certainly in the last week or so, I think you'll have seen a bunch of content from notable folks like Kyle at Out of Spec, Tom Malogney, and Brandon Flash. Probably didn't cover it because he's working there, so you'll get plenty of good content from the others giving kind of his take on the situation and Alpitronic's introduction to North America. I think, Walter, because it's in your backyard, I guess I just want to kind of start with you. And we've talked a lot about Kempower in the last year. It's actually about a year since I visited that site up in Canada, in Quebec, and pretty much still crickets down here. I know we've had a few installs, but nothing that is the full satellite system. So you can obviously get these press releases. There are some big names, big news here and there, but it doesn't necessarily lead to an immediate rollout. How are you feeling about where Alpitronic starts up here?
Yeah, if I can, but before I go into Alpitronics, I want to mention Kempower. Although they've been kind of quiet, the Zeph Energy build has been almost exclusively Kempower, and there's been 3 stations, 2 of which are open over in this neck of the woods. One at a Ford dealership, one at a plaza with like a Publix or some kind of grocery store that's got 6 stall Kempower, and then there's a third one coming online shortly. So I'm actually interested to see how they start stretching their legs here in North America, because a lot of people are very passionate about the Kempower approach of basically just ripping out gas pumps and putting in electric chargers. But for Alpitronic, they call themselves German engineering with Italian design, manufactured in Wisconsin. I think that's a very strange mix, but there you are. Their headquarters, as you say, is in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not too far from where I work. Would be, I don't know, about 5 miles as the crow flies. So it is close to the downtown area of Charlotte, in a pretty up-and-coming area. And as you mentioned, Brandon Flash now works there. And I saw that those hyperchargers were out front, the ones that Tom and Kyle were getting photographed in front of. And I said, hey, are these public? Because I'm going over there with my Lyriq and starting to take some video and get some charging. And they said, no, not yet. Brandon actually chimed in and said, but we might be able to make arrangements. So I might be able to meet Brandon and get a charging session going there. And who knows, I'm prone to impulse buying, so I might come home with an Alpitronics hypercharger also. So anyway, it is pretty exciting, because they were alluding to who they might be installing in October, but they seem to be tight-lipped. But I think we all know who that is, and I think we'll be talking about that here. And if it is who we think it is, and if the press releases are to be believed, we're talking about someone writing $1 billion check to someone pretty soon, and a lot of hardware starting to get planted into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably I don't think it's been announced certainly, but we know from listings and permitting that Iona is down in Texas. They're starting their build in areas of Houston. We've talked about the rechargery there, but they've also got filings for Plano, a couple of other sites I think down there. But in one of them specifically, Owl Services was listed, but also Alpitronic hyperchargers were mentioned in the filing. So Iona seems to be at the very least, they're on the list. I don't know if they'll be the sole provider, but if they are as reliable as the press releases want you to believe, then you can certainly see that being a big boon right out of the gate for a network that's looking to build a whole bunch in a short amount of time. Tyler, if you can hear me, if I haven't screwed up my audio, how are you feeling about? I mean, obviously they're not too far from you, but what do you know about Alpitronic? How are you feeling based on obviously your trials and tribulations with Electrify America, which we'll get onto in a little bit. But how are you feeling about that kind of Alpitronic entrance into the US market?
I'm very excited about it because we sorely need reliable, high-powered, fast charging, especially on travel corridors in the United States. And if they are as reliable as they say they are, and as they've proved to be in Europe, then I will be very pleased having them joining the ranks of American charging.
And Eric, you're always crying out for new hardware over there to go and review. You've sung the praises of Electric Era and some of their stuff a little bit just from the first site and the focus on reliability. Same watchword for pretty much every player really now, but Alpitronic, what are you feeling in the wind?
Well, I mean, I think, just to speak to the Kempower for a moment, I think they might have been a victim of NEVI. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but I think the NEVI funding demanding 150 plus kilowatt power per stall might have thrown a wrench in Kempower's adoption by a lot of people, because why are you going to give up that much funding when you can go with a charging provider who's giving hardware that natively meets, NEVI standards? So that might have been what we saw with Kempower, which sucks because I think their satellite configuration makes a lot of sense for a lot of implementations, in particular like grocery stores and cities, things like that. It makes a lot of sense for that. But Alpitronic, I'm happy to see them, of course, with the loss of Tritium, it looks like, and possibly FreeWire, right? We're starting to see a lack of hardware providers. In terms of the reliability, though, I mean, I have noticed personally a marked improvement in the reliability of pretty much most of the major networks hardware, especially this current generation, right? The 4th generation Electrify America hardware. ChargePoint Express has been pretty decent. And EVgo has as well. Their biggest issue has been abuse and vandalism. And then the turnaround time to fix those chargers that have been abused or vandalized, right? And that's where we're running into these reliability issues, is the turnaround time and fixing. Now, I don't know if I read this right, but it seemed like Alpitronic, not only are they saying their hardware is easier to repair, but it seemed like they were really trying to set up crews to actually do it. So their certified technicians are not just getting certified, they're also, it sounds like, getting equipped to, manage these chargers. And it could be, back to Walter's $1 billion checks being passed back and forth. There could be an understanding of, a full service tech support in addition to the hardware. And if that's the case, then yeah, that's going to be a huge difference maker, because we know the issues with regional hardware tech support for all of these other, these other companies. And that's really, it's the turnaround time on the fixes. We know things are going to break. We know they're going to go down. Even Alpitronic acknowledges their stuff isn't bulletproof, but it's a matter of fixing it in a timely manner so that chargers aren't down for weeks, months at a time. So I'm looking forward to that, especially to see more about their service and support, not just the reliability of their hardware.
Yeah, we've always said about Tesla and the supercharger network, which is the main topic tonight, and we will get on to. It's not really that they don't go down; it's just that they have a mix of rapid service. You don't necessarily notice when they do, or even if a stall or two is out, they have the enough stalls at any one location to make it a non-issue.
Yeah, one of the original cases of vandalism with these charging stations was Barstow Superchargers, and someone went through and pulled out all of the switches, all of the switch gear, and Tesla, I think, it had it back up and running again in under 48 hours. Their entire site was taken offline by vandals, and they were able to restore it within a day.
Right.
So,
yeah. So I mean, that's really the major piece of it. I think we have, we want to start seeing where these are going in. If we're looking at the first installs, if it is going to be Iona that comes right out the gate with them, then that Houston Rechargery is supposed to be online. This is not going to happen. But Halloween was the mooted date before. I don't see anything. All the plug share listings, unless there's been a lot of action in the last couple of weeks, are only showing a kind of very thin, sad-looking site. So I think we still have some time to wait for that one. But that may be the place to look. If you're in Texas, that could be the first kind of location or state kind of area you're going to start seeing these.
In the Tom Malogny interview, though, with the CEO, he was talking about standing in front of an Alpitronic install, and he seemed pretty confident in October. So it might not be in Texas. It might be somewhere else. If there's a sleeper site out there that's getting built already.
My understanding too is Mercedes. They're swapping out some of their charge point hardware with, I believe, Alpitronic at some locations. Is it not Alpitronic?
Weren't the BP Pulse locations that were with Simon also the renders? I mean, it's always renders, so you're only going visuals. But as far as I recall, that was a hypercharger in those.
It could be BP Pulse, but he was talking about standing in front of one in mid-October, and he seemed pretty confident about it. And he seemed to indicate that it was not Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to follow Tom's travels. Okay, so I think we'll just keep an eye on those. It's something we're going to cover ad infinitum once it starts to roll out. But we're just excited to have a player in that's hopefully going to get going really quickly here. After the press releases, we're all used to waiting for months and years in some cases. But if this gets going, this year, then we're in good shape, I think. We want to shout out, we're on the cusp here of National Drive Electric Week, which begins this weekend. The events are all over the place. I couldn't even pick one, to be honest. There are so many. I do know that one of the biggest is over in Schenectady in New York, and I believe Liv and Patrick from the Mach-E vlog are going to be out there. There are other events going around, different locations. You can go onto the just Google NDEW 2024 and you'll come across the map there. You can look at through your zip code. But any events that are in your respective areas that you want to call out whilst we're on the topic of what is probably one of the bigger weeks of the year for electric vehicle bums in seats?
I can go first if that's all right. Yeah, so in the state of North Carolina, there's two centers of EV passion, one of which is the Triangle Tesla Club, which is one of the few clubs that actually gets to use the Tesla emblem on their shirts and hats and everything. They've got grandfather claws, so they consider themselves high and mighty. But, they're a pretty passionate crew, and anytime you need a swarm of 50 Teslas to show up somewhere, you call the Triangle Tesla Club. The other one is the Blue Ridge EV Association, and they're holding their annual National Drive Electric event in Asheville, North Carolina this weekend. So I'll be attending that. I'm looking forward to it. And they should have some color too. Down here in the South, the color is coming slower than what I'm seeing up north.
Tyler, not too far from you, North Carolina to Maryland, but what are any plans for the week or something you'd like to call out?
Unfortunately, no. I teach marching band, and we have a competition on Saturday, so I'll be working all day. But the one, I think it's in Poolesville, Maryland. I know they do a big Drive Electric event. I'm not sure. I feel like that is this weekend, but I don't know off the top of my head. But I would love to go there one day.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I've got it's almost all the good ones seem to be on Saturdays, and my soccer my Saturdays are pure soccer with the kids, so that's not happening for me either. So band or soccer, it's excluding the National Drive Electric Week for me. Eric, what's happening on the West Coast?
Well, I don't know.
All of the West Coast. Just start in Seattle, drive way on down, and see what you find.
Yeah, maybe hit every single one of them. Yeah. I didn't really have any plans, but maybe I should have to crash something locally. Since I've been up in Northern California, I haven't really been that active with like the EV advocacy groups that I was part of down in Southern California. So I need to. Yeah, maybe I need to head down to Camarillo on October 3rd. That would be the date. Yeah.
I know there's a bunch of California viewers, so if you're in the comments here and have a good event to let us know about in California especially, please do so. But yeah, keep an eye on that. Look at the website, see if there's something near you that you can either go and take a look at, or maybe give test drives, relay your experience, whatever you can do to kind of share your EV and show people that they are usable everyday commuters or long distance road trippers, anything in between. It's always valuable to get out there and give folks a look. So let me jump to the comments here before we hit our main topic. Apologies if my eyes are darting all over here. I'm trying to second monitor and it's all kind of off whack with the camera. So I'll just go through the comments. Got Mike Mahan. Hi guys. Finally selling our Audi e-tron. That will only leave us with 2 EVs, no gas cars. Mike has more EVs than most local dealerships. So if, I don't know, he wants people in his driveway, but he's probably owned most of the EVs that you might want to buy. So still has the Model 3 Highland and the Lexus, I think, RZ450E. So he's down in Southern California. And if you know of any events, Mike, let us know. Andy Getch down in Florida, Fort Myers, in a Ford Mustang Mach-E and a Smart 4.2 ED Cabrio. Stormy at the moment by the sounds of it. Let's see. And Andy's asking, wondering if the topics tonight include the additional Electrify America sites, still mostly in SoCal with 85% charge limit. Well, if we stay on topic and manage to crack out everything, then we can actually talk about extra stuff. We've done pretty well in the last couple, but we are renowned for going way over time. So we'll try and put a pin in that one, and hopefully we'll be able to jump back to it as part of the main conversation. We'll definitely be touching on Electrify America, so that should be a good one to link up. We have Mark Beringer in Newcastle, Ontario, up in Canada, in a Kia EV6 GT line, a 2-driver. Excellent. Nice vehicle for sure. And as he mentions, looks like Kia will get access to the Supercharger network in January. Yeah, that's going to be another piece of our conversation. It was part of the news potentially, but we just wanted to make sure we kind of put everything into one section with that. But Kia's definitely making some Hyundai owners a bit jealous if they jump ahead of us in the queue here. John Baker, hi from the UK. Thanks for staying up. That is not an easy place to be way past midnight, actually. I think you're past 1 a.m. now. So thank you for staying with us as long as you can. Jay Donaldson, good evening. Tom Palmer, another Californian there. Thank you for joining us from San Diego. And Coopy 810, Holly Springs, North Carolina, in a 2022 Bolt EV, has the adapter on back order, used his reward points. I don't know if that was from Tyler's video, but that was a really valuable takeaway I got right away from the kind of tips there. You can use your GM reward points, which build up pretty quickly, and I don't know what I ever would have used them on, but had I been in the market for an adapter, that would have been one of my things to buy. Jed, don't think Kempower is for lack of trying. Major charge point operators just haven't taken them up. Yeah, it's interesting. There's, that was a big one in Europe. Osprey was pretty right on to them, but Zeph Energy, as much as they're useful in the middle of the country, that Minneapolis, Minnesota kind of area, they're just not going to get big traction with them, I don't think. So you want maybe your Francis Energies or some of your newer kind of CPOs to jump on, and as Jed says, with Iona and Alpitronic, that's going to be probably a pretty big build out if they're going right out of the gates pretty quickly. We have Paul in hot Bakersfield, California. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Scott Thomas with the Ford Mustang Mach-E Performance, GT Performance up in upstate New York. Chase over at the Grid Connections podcast, another great episode dropped today. I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name. He's a regular from Autoline. Maybe Walter, you know. Don't want to throw you under the bus, but you may have seen it.
No, it didn't hit my radar yet. I apologize.
Okay. Chase can let us know. He's from Autoline. He's been a regular on some of their episodes. Very good guest, worth going to check out.
John McElroy?
That sounds correct. Yeah, Chase has so many good guests. I get kind of confused with some of the names sometimes, but well worth going to check out. And we're cracking through here. Dactylonian in Poolsville, Clarksville. Oh, maybe that's places where the chargers are.
No,
that's not all the places he lives, right?
Those are drive electric events close to me.
Okay, perfect. Great.
Yeah, Poolsville was last weekend. Clarksville is this weekend.
Okay, excellent.
So
Thank you. So those are the places to go check. Google those locations and see if there's an event that you haven't missed yet. Mark, I know Mark is over not far from Columbus, Ohio. Marching bands are great. High school or college? That's the first question for you.
Oh yeah, I responded to him in the comments.
Oh, you got that one already? I'm not that far down.
High school marching band.
Gotcha. Awesome. You're just a little bit below there. Yeah, I got you. Crazy Postman, a little late. Don't worry. Downloading some ASS. I'm pretty sure that's a Tesla thing. I've seen that somewhere on Twitter X.
Yeah, it only works with the whoopee cushion on.
Okay, that's probably more information than I need. So we'll leave it. If you know, I'm sure you know.
I think it's the smart summons.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Man-child. And finally here, through the comments again, thanks for joining us. Platform Fanatic, cannot wait for my Ioniq 5 to get a blazing 97 kilowatt at Tesla stations. Yep. So when we say this is because the version 4 Superchargers, while really still version 3 backends of the Superchargers, I think we've been over this a few times, but that's one of the reasons that the EGMP cars are slow on Superchargers is that they don't get enough voltage, but then they're also not able to boost them up to the voltage that they would want to get that higher, closer to 240 kilowatts. So we get 97 kilowatts, which will do you in a pinch, but if there's another option nearby, we're probably taking that one, which kind of leads us in nicely to our topic for the evening. But Tyler, I didn't want to leave you kind of without some kind of intro, so we should mention the Average EV YouTube channel, which is your go-to source at the moment, certainly for a lot of Equinox EV content. In the past, you've had a Volkswagen ID4, an older Tesla Model S. Maybe just give us for anyone who hasn't checked out the videos, I think there's a lot of overlap with all of us and what you do, but just let us know kind of how you came into electric vehicles, what started you in YouTube, and anything else you'd like to share before we jump into the Equinox EV side of things.
Yeah, sure. So my brother back in like 2013 or 2014 purchased a Tesla Model S. And ever since then, I was like super into EVs, but could never afford one. And then I think it was during COVID or right after, I was watching some out of spec videos with Kyle Connor driving around the Hyundai Kona Electric. And I'm like, I could do that. I think I could do the electric car thing. And so I found like a really sweet lease deal on a Kona Electric. I think it was like $190 a month and for 3 years. So I jumped on that and I started doing that. And I'm a teacher. That's my day job. So I saw a little bit of a vacuum of education that kind of is at the level of people who are beginners. And so that's where I kind of jumped in, and I was learning a lot of the stuff that I was teaching kind of as I was going about learning things and presenting it to people. So I see myself as like the voice of the average EV driver. And that's how I came up with the name. And I just try and help people in their journey. And I like to answer people's questions and kind of demystify EVs, because for the majority of people's use cases, they could easily do an EV and it would fit their lifestyle. It's not for everybody, but I think there's a lot of people, hopefully over the next couple of years, will start to make the jump. And I thought that the Equinox EV was the vehicle that might be that vehicle for a lot of people because it's the right size, it's going to be the right price. And so that's why I ultimately decided to get that car.
Yeah, I know you've been through kind of the ringer with different choices, right? You had a bunch of different potential EVs. I think the Volvo EX30 was on the table for a little while before that was delayed coming to the US.
Yeah, I saw the writing on the wall with that car. I watched a bunch of European YouTubers talk about all the issues with the car, and I was like, this thing's not coming to the US anytime soon.
Mhm.
And so that's why I had a change of plans.
I think no, but it's a really good niche that you're filling there because that does, present company included, we get way down into the weeds, and I know your stuff will go there. You'll get into the charging curves, and some of that stuff is fun for you as well. But it always feels approachable, very human, just kind of trying to take it for that first buyer, or at least the people who are just starting to get into electric vehicles. So it's a good overlap with National Drive Electric Week as well, because that's what we're trying to do. But you did touch upon the Chevy Equinox, so we should go really quickly to it's been relatively recent, right? This is one of the latest Ultium models, certainly one of the most important in terms of affordability, and again, that average EV crossover. How has it been? And there's tons of videos on your channel, so we can all go and check that out afterwards. But just potted kind of first few months of ownership, how are you feeling? What's the ups and the downs of getting into this really important model for GM?
Yeah, I mean, I reached a little bit, and I got the 3LT trim, so I have like all the nice things, which is cool. But overall, it's just a really nice car, and even because for the 2025 model year, they're gonna have the LT, which is the base trim that a lot of people are looking for. I still think that's gonna be a nice car, based on what I've read of what is still in it, even without having the higher trim levels. So it's built really well. It drives really well. I do have the sportier tires, so it could drive a little bit better, I think, with the thicker, the larger profile tires. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's certainly not spec wise like the best EV in the world when it comes to like driving performance, but that's not what this car is meant for. It's meant for like families, driving around town, that kind of thing. It's not meant for going to a track and trying to have the best, quarter mile time. So yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed it a lot as far as it being a car. When it comes to an EV, and like we get into the weeds a lot, so like I have to, I try and like be in two different worlds, because as far as like the EV performance, it's definitely a little bit disappointing in the charging, but in the reality, when I hop over to like when I take it on a road trip, it really wasn't that bad. So like, you do the 10 to 80% charge curve, and it's like, whoa, it took, 46, 51 minutes. It's never the same. It's literally never the same. It's always a different time. But then you like do the real world application of it, and it's fine. And like, I have a family, and we did a trip to Smith Mountain Lake, and the car was waiting on us every time. So like, like we definitely get in the weeds. I want it to be, the best car in the world. I was hoping that the charging would be a little bit more consistent, and I'm thinking that with updates they could provide that. I'm finding and I think everybody here has noticed there's some like thermal issues with it. And with my latest charging on the V4 Supercharger, I've identified that I think a little bit is with the chargers actually, and then a little bit is with the car. So it's like a twofold thing causing the charging performance to be inconsistent. But aside from that, like it really is a great car. The charging's not terrible. It's still, I think the best place to live for it is like 20 to 80, 30 to 80, which is honestly, I was thinking about it driving back from rehearsal today. Like that's where most people end up charging from anyways. Like I'm the person that goes down to like 5%, but most people don't feel comfortable doing that. So I feel like most people who end up buying it won't even have an issue with the charging. And actually, a lot of people who comment, actually say they're pleased with the charging on my videos.
Yeah, it could be an indication of where we are in the buyers, you know, early adopters versus the kind of mainstream coming up here. Eric, you've commented a lot on Tyler's videos. I'm sure you've both been into the weeds as much as you can. But what are kind of any initial questions that you would have for Tyler, or just kind of comparisons with, you know, your early Bolt EV ownership and what you've seen from the model there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think mostly because I don't want to offend you, Tyler, but I've consumed other Ultium content from other video makers. So, no, I actually, this is what I was going to say, because I watched, you know, I watched Tyler do his boomerang run versus some of the DC fast charging tests, and you see that the difference really, like once you actually get it on the road, it becomes almost a non-issue. And that's what I've noticed about the Ultium packs in general, or the Ultium cars in general, is their charging is deceptively okay. And the reason I say that is because the thermal limitations really do appear to be with the socket and the harness, not necessarily the battery. And that's that 15 minutes that you get, a little over 15 minutes before that dip really hits you. And I think it hits the 85 kilowatt hour worse because of the voltage, whereas it also hits the Lyriq. So Walter will also see it in his Lyriq, but you're higher voltage, so the dip isn't as bad or as long. So the 100 kilowatt hour does have a little bit of an advantage, but I just look at it as, you know, out of spec. Kyle does that 10% or that 15-minute challenge, right? If you look at the numbers, as bad as the Equinox's charging looks, it would be on par with the ID4 and Tesla Model Y in terms of how many miles you can go with a 15-minute charge starting at 10%, because you're going to get close to 50% battery, not quite, but a little bit under, and then the efficiency kicks in. So I think, and the other thing too is, we have to remember that I think a lot of people who are buying the Equinox are coming from the Bolt EV. And you try to tell a Bolt EV owner that charging to 80% in 35 to 45 minutes is bad, or that you can only travel 500 miles or 600 miles on 3 20-minute charges. You tell a Bolt EV owner that, and they're like, what's the problem?
That's awesome.
Like what's your complaint? So, yeah, and that's why I'm looking forward to. I'm really looking forward, Tyler, and you need to let us know ASAP is when those updates on that charging profile roll out. Because if GM can figure out a way to smooth out that Ultium charging profile, I think we really are looking at like a nothing burger in terms of the charging. And then at that point, like you said, it's everything else about the car. You seem pretty happy with the interior, and that's something that I've noticed with the Bolt EV over time, is GM and Chevrolet improved the interior. I haven't actually sat in an Equinox yet, so I'm living vicariously through you. But it seems like a great car, all other things. Yeah, I mean, the only question I would really have is so far the Google, integrated Google. How are you liking it? That's my biggest question.
So my wife's car is a ID4, which has Apple CarPlay, and then I have the Equinox, which is the Google built in, and I don't miss Apple CarPlay when I come into the Equinox. I enjoy having it when I'm in the ID4 because I'm used to it, and I've had it for a long time with Kona and our car before the ID4. But when I get into the Equinox, I'm not missing anything because the main apps I used were Spotify, which is built in, and Spotify works great. It doesn't look great, but it works great. And then Waze, which works pretty well. There's some weird things with the coloration, but that like went away. And so anyway, so that works fine. The one thing I liked about Apple CarPlay Waze is you can have Waze, and then on your phone it'll have the list directions, where you can't have that with the Google interface. It actually won't let you open Waze at all on your phone. If you try to open Waze on your phone, it will stop it on the car because it's linked to your account. It's like a weird thing. I don't know. And then I have been enjoying having the Google Assistant. That works well. And actually, I said, "Hey, Google." And people got very upset that I said that in a video because it was setting off their things. And so I will no longer
Thanks
say
for bringing
that.
it to this one, then. Appreciate that.
I will never say it out loud again because I got some scathing comments about that. But it works.
Just
most
even that up here. Alexa, hey Siri. Okay.
The Google Assistant works really great most of the time. I usually I found myself having to ask it things twice a lot, where I'll say whatever I want and it'll be like not connected to the network, and then I'll say it again and it'll work. So that's like a little weird bug I've had with it. As far as navigation is, didn't whisper it quiet. I'm sorry, crazy person, man. But as far as the navigation is concerned, it's not bad once you figure out how to set everything up. I wish, it doesn't, in my opinion, always take me to the chargers that I would choose. But for someone who buys a car and doesn't want to have to think about it, it's gonna get you to where you want to go. And that's I guess what most people want at the end of the day.
Yeah, like an EV neophyte gets into a Equinox and says, "I want to go 1,000 miles away." It'll do a decent job guiding them then, or
yes, you'll get there. You might not get there. You might not get there as fast as if like I planned your route for you, but like you'll definitely get there. I will say, because I know we're going to talk about this later, but at this point, the Tesla Superchargers have still not been integrated into the navigation. All the Magic Dock ones are, but I keep checking every day just in case it happens. But they still have not integrated. So I'm not sure if that's a Google thing or
It's a Google.
GM
Yeah,
thing.
there's a toggle switch coming.
So, yep. As soon as that comes, I'll be very pleased because we're next summer, we're taking a trip to Disneyland. So we're going from Maryland to Anaheim. So I will definitely want to have all the Superchargers and the navigation working together.
Oh, sweet.
So Walter's going to do it on the Pilot Flying J network. You're going to do it on the Supercharger network. What are you going to do it on, Eric?
Mercedes network.
Mercedes, only the best for your Bolt. Got it. All right. That brings us on pretty nicely. You're helping me out with segues here, no end, because unless you have any questions, Walter, for Tyler's ownership experience.
Just very quick, and to burst the bubble of new ownership that I remember feeling, I remember where I was, what you're experiencing now, what's really gotten old, though, and I don't know if you're at all feeling the buyer's remorse associated with, is the damn 2-bill subscription thing. One for cellular and one for the premium apps thing that GM is baking into making us all corporate slaves for the rest of our lives. Initially, I'm like, whatever. But it's now been, we're going on 2 years and I've been paying these bills every month. And we have free Wi-Fi in the car. So we got to pay for the cellular. And then you also have to pay for the apps. And after 3 years, we'll have to pay for Super Cruise also. So those are 3 different bills that you have to pay every month in order to just keep the car running.
Yeah. My understanding is here. Let me see if I can pull it up too, because I'm paying for one thing, but it's an overlap of something that already comes with the car.
I think that expires.
The app Connect.
Yeah, that expires after like 90 days or 180 days or something like that. And then you have to start paying for it.
I'll have to look a little closer into it. But I had looked at all the plans. There's a couple things that you got for 3 years, and there's a couple that were 8 years.
It's on my horizon here as well. Hyundai Blue Link expires in next March. So
Yeah,
that's a similar thing.
the loss of my complimentary charging is going to be a body blow.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, having 2 GM EVs with OnStar, all of my bills are through a single OnStar bill, but the vehicles are billed differently. So I still get 2 bills, but it's on a vehicle by vehicle basis, but still, yeah. I don't know.
Okay, that's our brave subscription future. Well, really planned. I should also mention, whilst we were on events, it's not a National Drive Electric Week event, but I'm sure everyone's familiar with Ionic Guy and the channel covering a lot of the EGMP models, as well as the classic Ionic Wind Knife. But he has an event up here in Massachusetts in early November there, which I'm 99.9% going to get across to. All kinds of stuff. It's on a track called the Palmer Motorsports. I can't remember the actual facility name, but that's November 3rd. He's got all kinds of stuff coming up there. It's in partnership with a Hyundai dealership in the area, Dunkin'. It's his version of Cars and Coffee. So children and dogs welcome. I will potentially bring a child. Definitely won't bring my dog because she's reactive and that could scupper the thing before it started. But worth checking out, and you can check out his Facebook page for that. That's the Ionic Guy in early November if you're in the Northeast. So I think that's most of the housekeeping, and we kind of touched upon the edge of the main topic tonight, which is GM Superchargers access for most makes and models, and actually one that was perhaps not a surprise to some people, but the people have been able to get the Honda Prologue to charge as well. So as well as opening up to all the Cadillac and Chevy models, we've also got the first Honda, which has been selling pretty well here over the summer, accessing that. Let's see, we will definitely come to you, Tyler, because there's all kinds of tests you've done. But Walter, you were out there jumping for joy once you got connected last week with your Cadillac Lyriq.
Man, I was for months seeing your car is not authorized bit back at me, and the first time it went green was an uncontrollable reaction. I don't apologize for that at all.
No, the crowd loved it. That was one of the first most commented moments of the video, I think. I don't know if you get that most replayed on yours, but I'm sure it'll show the spike in the analytics. Just hope someone doesn't make a GIF out of it. But we've got that initial kind of wave, right? Obviously, everyone's happy to get out there. It's that same thing. I won't, make any bones about it. I charged out to the nearest Magic Dock when those opened up, and was making an attempt to use those. So people are excited, of course. After the first experience, how are you seeing it as a potential change, if at all, to your road trips and the kind of things you might plan on the longer trips where you'll need fast charging?
Specifically with the Cadillac, because I actually own two EVs. One is the Volvo XC40 Recharge that has the charge port in the correct location for use at the Tesla Superchargers. So that's a completely different conversation, in my opinion. But for the Cadillac Lyriq, the raw numbers of supercharger stalls, like Eric was at Dunnigan, I believe how it's pronounced. Dunnigan, California, where there was, I think, about 50 stalls. And Brandon Flash recently crossed paths with the 78 stall. Well, actually, it was not 78. It's 68 superchargers. And then there was 10 Mercedes-Benz charging hub at a Buc-ee's in Texas. And so just the sheer numbers of stalls that are available just is, huge number of, just a sea of charging stalls that are available to people. My personal opinion, though, is that since my wife principally drives the Lyriq, and it sounds kind of novel or petty, but she has nails that she keeps kind of meticulous, and a lot of women do nowadays, and that adapter is not too conducive to allowing to pull out and put it back in if you've got long nails. And it sounds silly like that, but if she's driving and she's got a choice of either stopping at a Tesla Supercharger or somewhere where she doesn't need an adapter, I think the use of the adapter in and of itself is problematic. So in model year 2025, where NACS is a standard port, Supercharger access probably makes more sense with General Motors cars. But with the current generation, where an adapter is necessary in order to gain access, we're now stacking up the points of failure and the complexity with the A to Z adapter. The first generation also pulling it out, Eric, I don't know if you've noticed, the disconnecting the button is kind of sandwiched up under close to the car, and pulling it out is a little bit awkward. With the one from GM, I understand that's not really the case. but just the awkwardness of having to use an adapter is a bigger detriment than I think people are leading on. So yes, it is exciting for the access to the sea of charging stalls that are out there, and for certain circumstances that definitely makes sense. But I think for my wife, she's got a friend who is in the panhandle of Florida who unfortunately is staring down the barrel of a gun with the storm coming on shore. And my hopes and thoughts and prayers are to everyone who's in line of the storm, because I've been through some of those. It's definitely a traumatic experience, so hope everyone stays safe. But her trip can easily be covered by, truck stops with canopies and no need for adapter. So as it currently stands, if she's going to visit her friend, I don't really tell her what to do, and she doesn't listen when I try to anyway. But if she asks my advice, I would recommend probably stick to Pilot Flying J, because she can get from our house to there easily just using Pilot Flying J, just the way they built out Interstate 75.
And Tyler, we can go and watch your videos after this. Obviously, you were waiting for a good long time there, but got your adapter pretty quickly, it sounds like. Walk us through kind of your initial reaction, the experiences you've had, charging the car those first couple of times, and then we'll get into a little bit more kind of how it affects your network decisions and what you'll be doing on trips, maybe.
Sure. So I was very excited about the access coming. It actually opens up some travel for me that was not possible before, or would become more inconvenient. Like, I want to take a trip to Kentucky, and the best way for me would be to go through West Virginia, and there is like very few chargers in West Virginia. So I'd literally have to go around West Virginia, which would be really inconvenient. Now I can go right through West Virginia, stop at a Supercharger, and go to Kentucky. Additionally, for me, when we eventually take this cross-country trip, it's peace of mind knowing that I have lots of options now. I don't have to rely upon Electrify America, or maybe be stuck at a station that only has 2 chargers that work, or 4 chargers that work partially. And I know that I can always defer to a Supercharger if I have to, or I can stick exclusively to Supercharger, which is likely. Because actually, I don't know about other places, but on the East Coast, it's actually more affordable if you are a member and you drive enough to be on Supercharger network compared to Electrify America. Even the member rate, it's like a couple cents, but it's still, if you're going to drive a lot, it's worth it. If you're not, probably not worth it. But I was very excited, and I remember I was teaching. And I got out of school, and that's when reality hits me, because I get no phone service. So, so anyways, I go out, I'm like, it happened today. And now I have rehearsal. So then I went to rehearsal, and then after rehearsal, I went to the closest Supercharger to me. And I already had an electron adapter ready to go just for this video. And so I could make that video, and then, it worked great. It's definitely the electron adapter is it's not, when you're videoing, it's a lot harder to use. So I've never used it without, when I'm not videotaping. But it's definitely a couple things that could make it a little bit cumbersome. I would definitely recommend, honestly, with any of the chargers, to take out the Tesla first and leave it in your car. That way you can go plug it back in and then get the adapter out, because then you don't have to worry about holding the adapter as you're walking around doing things. But it wasn't too terrible, but I had to remember, I had to pull the thing on the bottom to get the Tesla one out, and then I had to push the top so it was just some growing pains there. And then I ordered the adapter from GM, and I opted to do it where it was delivered to GM, to my dealer, to my Chevy dealer, and it came in 2 days. And it was the Tesla adapter, so the one that Tesla's been providing. And so there it is. And I use that, and that worked great as well. Definitely, to me, I know you all have held some of the other adapters too, but it definitely doesn't feel as good of quality. But that's just my personal opinion. And I had trouble also with their the push button top. To get it out of my car. It wasn't super easy, but it worked eventually. So that's kind of my experience with that adapter. And then obviously I've used the Magic Dock several times at those. And I would recommend, if you go to a V4 or a Magic Dock site, to just use the Magic Dock, because that's going to be an overall better experience for your charging needs.
And Eric, that's you've been to the Magic Docks that were up in Northern California. Now you've got I can't remember, you're using the A to Z adapter?
Yeah, no, yeah. So I first want to say, yeah, don't tell the Ford folks, Tyler, that you got your adapter in 2 days. I know some people that have been waiting months.
I've definitely on Twitter, I've definitely gotten some messages.
Yeah. You got whitelisted. It's right there. Yeah, I actually, and this is maybe to chime in to Walter's point too, and then I think Tyler, it sounds like you have similar experiences or similar opinion. I don't think I fully appreciated how much the adapter takes away from the experience. And it's not the adapter in and of itself, right? That's fine, but it's having to take it out of your car, having to hook it up, all of that, versus, like you'd mentioned, the Magic Dock. So I almost feel like there's tiers to it, and it's just a compounding factor that sort of adds to the issues of using the Supercharger, in my opinion. And I have the first generation A to Z. I was an idiot and ordered it like months and months and months ago when GM was getting imminent access. And so that's the original one with a kind of a fidgety locking mechanism. And it just, so apparently the next generation A to Z, the Typhoon Pro, is a lot better. It's more, to me, it's once you start, it's a compounding issue where V3 formatting, so you're either taking up 2 stalls, the nose-in stalls, the Bolt EV can actually do just a single stall, but then anybody who has a bike rack or a trailer, you're blocking them out. But then the stress of having busy superchargers, which I feel like, and this is a callback to one of your old videos, Walter, where you crossed like halfway through the South on superchargers and never saw another soul charging at the Tesla superchargers. You get to California, they get crowded very, very fast. And when you have a car that's taking up multiple stalls, that becomes a very stressful event too. And so all of this stuff compounding onto it, I feel like there's almost a tier list to it, where if it's V3, I'm probably not going to prioritize it at all if I have to bring my own adapter. And then if it's Magic Dock, then yeah, that's fine. But it's still, if it's a V3 Magic Dock, I won't really prioritize it. V4, now you have longer cables, better cable management. The dispenser is placed to support multiple different EV formats. I could see myself even prioritizing V4. The only issue I would have at that point is, and maybe this is a California thing, but the superchargers were way more expensive. So the base rate without membership for Tesla Supercharger was more than the base rate for Electrify America without a membership in California. And then it just scales down from there. And then $13 a month. I would need to charge at least 4 times a month in my Bolt EV on a supercharger to make up that difference. And it would still be more expensive than an Electrify America with membership. And so, yeah, but to answer that last part of the question you asked everyone else, Steve, too, I know people say, oh, you're in California, you have all the charging you want. We still have charging deserts here. In fact, we have one that's about the size of West Virginia, and there's a section of that highway that you can only access on DC charging if you have access to superchargers. And so this does open up 2 V3 superchargers along a 300 to 350 mile scenic highway route up in the mountains that I actually happen to go to a lot. So rather than having to rely solely on level 2 to make that trip, I now have access to two V3 superchargers that are open. So it does give me some room to travel that I didn't have before. So that is a good thing.
So, I mean, we started to get into it a little bit there. The question of leaving Electrify America behind. I think that seems to be the kind of joyous sentiment. Certainly on Twitter seems to be a popular place to dance on the grave of Volkswagen's favorite network. But it's something you did, Tyler. I think you wanted to, I think you've chronicled your local stations of Electrify America being particularly painful, and I don't think any of us deny that. It's certainly, if you find the certain locations have just been a constant pain in the backside for folks, and I could find them around here as well. There's a couple that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, but. So as we start to think about, is it as straight, as simple a decision, do you think, as, now you're just going to hit the superchargers? That is basically all you need. Or how do you kind of see that switching for most people in most situations? Should it be as simple as my Electrify America plan gets cancelled, I put that $7 towards the $12.99 of the superchargers? Or is there going to be more of a dance here where you start assessing other networks, thinking about what they might offer, and whether that will in future maybe influence your supercharger membership?
Well, I'm going to obviously keep an eye on everything. Electrify America. It's the problem is I have had really good experiences with Electrify America. Like when I went to Smith Mountain Lake, all the chargers worked perfectly fine. I had zero issues and it was great. But while I was driving there, in the back of my mind, every time is it going to work or not? Because I've gone to Electrify America stations that are allegedly completely functional, like my local station, and it's completely not functional. At my local station, still, it's been over 2 years. They're still not fully functional, every single one, outputting less than they're supposed to. And I've contacted them. I've called them. I've been on the phone. I've asked for supervisors, and they haven't done really anything to actually improve the scenario. So I've always kind of had really little trust in Electrify America, but no choice to use them. And now I have the option to not use them. There are some places going across the country, like where I'll have to use Electrify America, and it's just going to be what it's going to be. But if I can use something else, I will. I've been enjoying, because we like to go to North Carolina a lot, so I like the Circle K stations a lot. I like the layout, and I like the amenities around them, so that's really nice. I'm definitely interested in Iona to see what they bring to the table and how competitive pricing they have compared to Tesla. So I think they're going to. And then I really actually have not had the pleasure of charging at Pilot Flying J, because it's just never been on my route. I think there was one on my route, but I went to the Circle K instead. And but their pricing tends to be it varies based on the region. So price would be a factor if I were ever to use Pilot Flying J. But I think going out, if I were to go out to I have a friend that lives in Chicago, there might be some Pilot Flying J's I could use over Electrify America, which would provide better amenities and might actually work. And then, any other number. So I'm definitely going to kind of see how things go. I also think that there's going to be a point where Electrify America either fixes their problems or they run themselves out of business. They just have to, so hopefully, and maybe they'll be getting some good charging hardware soon too. I've heard some things. So that might help with them. And just to kind of bounce back to the Alpitronic stuff really quick, the reason why, and I think someone said it, the reason why Supercharger Network is so great is because of how quick they can fix them. And I actually, at one station, I didn't realize this, but first it was actually one of their Tesla solar people who they didn't have any jobs that day. And so they send them out to fix chargers. And he was explaining to me that the supercharger, if there's a problem that the supercharger knows, it'll alert them and print a ticket without a human being involved. And so if Alpitronic can kind of do stuff like that, and then maybe that hardware can get to more manufacturers and it's easy to service and people actually know what they're doing when they're servicing them. Because again, I've been to Electrify America stations, and I had an issue at one of the stations where there was a cable cooling issue, and the tech was there And I was like, hey, this one's having an issue. And he's like, well, I don't have a ticket for it. And I'm like, okay. And so like, like he could have just checked it out while he's there, but he didn't have a ticket. So there's a whole bunch of issues with Electrify America. But to your point, I won't completely cast them away, but I will definitely look to other places before I look to Electrify America.
It was just that symbolic pent-up kind of rage of several years to go through that cathartic moment of tapping the cancel button.
It was nice.
Let's see. So here's a remark that I resemble. Yes, we will continue using EA until March. However, I think there's still something to be said. It's gonna. I've even on this trip that I just took tried to use other networks just to stay in touch with what's going on, and I think Circle K is a good shout. Not least because the most expensive they get is from what I've seen is 49 cents a kilowatt hour, which in today's pricing is positively frugal. And a lot of their stations are at 43 cents per kilowatt hour. I also like the fact that the ones that I've seen are often future proof. I'm sure Walter can speak a little more to that, but there's often a next level of conduit for maybe one or two more dispensers. So yeah, they're typically, I think they're building it out in the right way, even if they're not putting the full stall count in immediately. That they see what's coming, with the experience in Europe again being a big piece of that. Leonard says, I still use Electrify America when they're more convenient on his trips, and he's a Tesla driver. There was a period there where Electrify America was quite popular with Tesla drivers because it was cheaper. So in places where they had either per minute or just some of those that were very sometimes you get free charging, or the good old days, if you like to call it that, when they had it for Earth Day or things like that. There would be Tesla drivers using them, but that's obviously not going to last very much longer. Walter, anything? I mean, you cover so many different networks that you have your kind of finger on that pulse already, but where does Electrify America sit in the grand scheme of things for you at this stage with so much access going on?
So because of their non-Tesla preeminence that has kind of established itself in the contemporary culture, one group that really uses them heavily that I found are rideshare. And a rideshare person sits on a stall and they are belligerent. They will sit on that freaking stall until they get a call and off they go. And one hope I have is that with the Tesla Supercharger network opening to GM vehicles and other OEMs, is that the rideshare folk will look at the economics and find that the number of stations and also the cost per kilowatt hour, if you're a member, will draw the rideshare folk over to where there's plenty of power, plenty of stalls, and let them sit on those stalls. And it'll actually free up the CCS network more so than it currently is, because I see rideshare people really clogging up the CCS network. I don't see them clogging up the Tesla Supercharger network at all. At least that's my experience, that if a rideshare person is sitting on a stall, typically it's going to be a CCS stall. And I'm not quite sure what the economics are with that. But if we could, give them discounted rates or something and send them all over to the sea of Supercharger stalls, that would solve all kinds of problems.
I would just say Sunset Park in Brooklyn. Take a trip down there, and there's all kinds of rideshare drivers in that South Brooklyn one. That's the one I watch for real Tesla congestion. But yeah, there's more broadly, I don't think that's the case. I think, it is much more common at Electrify Americas. I've certainly been snarled up in Chicago a couple of times trying to stop and realizing that rideshare drivers were going to 100%. Which that kind of almost touches upon our 85%, but I don't know. Whilst we're on Electrify America, I guess we should hit that because Andy asked so nicely. So the congestion pilot, which was, for anyone who didn't catch that initially, 10 sites in California, primarily in metro areas, which would stop your charge on Electrify America stations at 85% because they were needing to increase throughput, and had people obviously camping, by the sounds of it, going to exactly what Walter says, to 100%, or just spending hours instead of minutes on them. So that has been expanded this week. They've gone up to, I think it was closing in on 40 stations, and they've got more outside of California. So you've got, I think it was 6 states. You've got Miami, Chicago, and then the kind of New Jersey, New York City area. So again, it's all in metro areas. So one of the biggest complaints was initially, what if I need to go to 100% because, or close to it, because it's in a remote area and I need to get to the next charger? That's not the case in the current iteration of it, because these are all in metro areas. You've got probably 100 other choices within, 10, 20 miles. So that long distance argument is kind of mooted. But then that gets into the complaint of people starting to say, well, if you've got to penalize your customers, then you're not doing a good job. And then to Tyler's point, you've got, what if 1 or 2 of those stations is down? I mean, it kind of increases the value of someone only being able to charge to 85% in that case. But again, it's kind of a bad look for the network that is capping people at 85% and then saying, well, the rest of our charges aren't, available to you. Eric, we've had too much quiet from you. So what are you thinking quickly on the congestion expansion, and how are you seeing this as a potential solution for throughput challenges?
Well, I will first say that after my initial Supercharger experience, I renewed my Electrify America membership. So that might say something. But then again, California, we have pretty much half of all of the Electrify America stations that have been put in the ground, right? Just at least by a money standpoint. So there's still a valuable resource here in California, pretty much for any EV driver. Yeah, I was looking at that expanded congestion reduction pilot that they're doing. And like, I look at it this way. I think most of these were urban support chargers. They're not travel chargers. They're not chargers that are helping you to drive 300 miles to the next charger. So people who are complaining about not being able to charge to 100%, realistically, they're at an urban charger in a major city where we know things get crowded. We know, people squat at the charger. So I actually don't think it's a knock on Electrify America at all. I just personally would go a different route with it. Rather than a hard stop at 85, I've always supported the idea of carrot and stick, right? Like you get maybe you get a discount if you're charging under that, or you get an additional fee for charging over. But don't necessarily kick people off exactly at 85. Just you're gonna be taking up the station as much to go from 85 to 100 as you did to go from 20 to 85. So you should be paying for that time that you're blocking other people from being able to access the charger. So it's more of a soft lock, but that's just my opinion on it. But I think it's necessary. But maybe to Walter's point, Superchargers opening up, it's gonna reduce a lot of stress on those even the urban chargers for Electrify America.
And Tyler, having spent so much time at broken Electrify America stations, do you think it's just a insult to injury, or is this actually something with a little bit of merit for these overcrowded stations?
Maybe a little bit of both. Because there are many situations where I've come upon people charging to 100%. One time I actually don't remember where it was, but there was a local, it was a healthcare provider or like nursing home or something, whatever. They had buses and they used it as their local charge stop. And I watched 2 buses roll up that have to wait to charge. And then there was everyone else who needed to charge. And the buses were charging to a very high state of charge. They also had an ID4, which looked very nice with their logo on it. That was also charging up very high. And, when you just want to get home and you see these people who are working for a local business and they're charging up, you're just like, ugh, could you let me charge so I can get on my way? But I do have the belief that everybody has the right to charge to whatever they want. I just wish people could be more aware of the other people around them. So like, if I'm at a charge and I'm by myself and I want to charge up to 100%, then I'll charge it. But if I see there's 5 people waiting to charge, then I'm probably going to head out. I mean, I feel guilty when I'm doing a charge test and 2 cars roll up and I'm almost done. And I'm like, I have to finish this recording. but I know you need to charge. So, but I guess everyone has the right to charge. So I think having an increased price above a certain state of charge is a great way to incentivize people to leave, but also give people the option to charge higher if they'd like. I do think it would be a better, easier pill to swallow if all the chargers worked at Electrify America, and I wonder how many issues would be reduced if all the chargers worked properly. But yeah, so it's a little bit of both.
Good to know. And Walter, whilst we have a chance to weigh in on the topic, what are your feelings on congestion caps?
Yeah, I'm against them. If there's a charging stall and I'm a paying customer, I've got every right to use it. Even if I've got a free plan, I should be able to use the thing as much as I want. And what they're trying to do is say, sorry, we don't have enough of these chargers. Well, the solution is put in more chargers. It's not my fault that you guys don't have enough chargers in the ground for the demand. So that's my personal opinion. And I understand the goal of what they're trying to do. So if there is a way around this, I think the solution is just solve it with bandwidth, similar to back in the day when we were struggling with bandwidth and bandwidth was expensive, and then ISPs took over and started putting in gig pipes everywhere, and all of a sudden everyone had a ton of bandwidth, and now there's 5 gig pipes, and you pay $85 for 5 gigs or what, something silly like that, and you just solve the problem with massive amount of chargers. So what we're trying to do now is a bit of a constraining metering sort of approach to solving a problem, which I'm personally against.
And AB has another version of this. Would it make sense to designate 1 or 2 express stalls with a charge limit as low as 50%? Leonard actually also pointed out, it kind of brings us back to Kempower. The solution of a ton of dispensers to share the load is a solution. 100% chargers who draw little power wouldn't take the station capacity down then. Yeah, I mean, it's moving. That's one of the downsides of not having had Kempower expand so rapidly is, first of all, it incentivizes quite big installs because they're not big posts and it doesn't take up a whole lot of space. You're just drawing that power from the satellite or to the satellites. But it's more about that moving the power where it's needed than trying to maximize one particular 350. It's the 350 bolt on a 350 kind of thing, or the old Tesla thing of, well, they can only do, as you say, Eric, so often 90 kilowatts per stall, but then there's not, there's rarely the case where that everybody's trying to pull so much at the same time. It's kind of tough to just argue with Walter's point. I think that it's the answer is more chargers. We need more chargers in the first place. I mean, in some of these locations it's hard to do because they're in a metro area by default. A lot of these places aren't going to want to give up more parking spaces for extra chargers to be put in, but that's what they're doing at some of these locations. I know down in Bedford, Pennsylvania, they expanded from the Electrify America from 4 to 6 stalls purely because they had lines just on busy weekends. So if they can do it there, you'd kind of hope that congestion being an issue would be maybe find another site host, build more in the same area, get that kind of redundancy rather than capping people's charge.
And you kind of mentioned that, Steve, and that was kind of a segue. I know is a point that we were considering talking about was that Tesla is kind of already doing that with the superchargers, because there's a myth right now that the V3 superchargers, that you can have 12 Teslas pull into a 12 stall V3 and everybody's pulling 250 kilowatts at the same time, and that's just not how they work, right? They only have 90 kilowatts allotted per stall, but because they do power sharing so effectively, it's almost transparent to anyone who pulls in, because you're never pulling your max power for that long, or at least not in the way that they would notice it. And so I think there's some validity to it. And in fact, this is one of the original criticisms we had of Electrify America, is when they were putting in their 150 kilowatt chargers, those were power split capable from the manufacturer, and Electrify America just chose to not do it. So you have people questioning, why are there two cables on this dispenser and only one of them can be active at a time? They could have allowed them to split 150 kilowatt between 2 stalls. They just chose not to implement them that way. And I feel like maybe even now in retrospect, that could have been a mistake, because every 4-stall Electrify America could have been an 8-stall Electrify America. Every 8-stall could have been a 16-stall. And it's just, if you're splitting power, you're not getting 150 kilowatt, you're getting some portion of it, and the other person's getting the rest. And I think for urban specifically, I think that's a solution. The only thing I'd caution against is for highway implementations. I do not like it. I actually very much prefer the dedicated power. If you say it's a 350 kilowatt charger, I should be getting 350 kilowatt, because it is my charger. I'm traveling. I'm not sitting around at a travel stop for 30 minutes to share power with someone else, right? Those would be the exceptions. But for urban, I think Kempower makes a great solution. Tesla makes a great solution. I think the other power splitting options make great solutions.
Just bring people to the horror of the Mass Pike solutions, where they've put in Autel solution, good hardware, like the hardware, but it's 60 kilowatt max because of the site limitations, and you will share that with these rest areas on I-90. You will share that, so you could be charging at a rest area at potentially 20-25 kilowatts. So it was actually better in the good old days when the EV Go stations were in there at 50 kilowatts, just letting you charge full. So that's my neck of the woods and how we're handling fast charging at travel plazas. Let's bounce ourselves back to Superchargers quickly. We are running out of time here, but we'll use the last little bit of time to reinforce some good etiquette. I think, Tyler, some of your videos here have hit on the ways that you should charge, the best places to kind of take up a stall as you approach this. GM owners, Ford owners have been through it. Certainly, we talked with Liv and Patrick at the Marquee vlog on the way to kind of approach, bringing your non-Tesla model to a Tesla Supercharger. What kind of tips have you started out sharing there? What should people watch out for who are in Equinox EV? Walter can speak to Cadillac, obviously, and then Eric can speak to the Bolt EV.
Well, go to V3 Plus stations, and then you don't have to worry about it. It was a great experience going to a V3 Plus, because you just park in the stall, you use the dispenser for that stall, and it worked, and it had the magic dock in it. But if you go to a version 3 dispenser, you want to try and go to the furthest right, and if you can be on the other side of it, that's even better. And then this it's kind of like a everybody work together scenario. If you're Tesla, start from the left, and if you're someone who has it on the wrong side, start from the right, and then work to the center. My understanding is in Europe, that's kind of what they agreed to, as with the different EV drivers, and it seems to work for the most part. Obviously, eventually, there's going to be a point where that's not going to work anymore, and someone's going to block a stall. And at that point, you just got to be kind to people and just know that people aren't doing it intentionally. They just want to charge, and that's the place to charge. I will say, at least my experience on the East Coast, and even taking 70 across, I've driven a Tesla across 70, and almost every supercharger we were at was completely empty. And on the East Coast, I did with the Tesla Model S, it was completely empty. So at least where I live, I don't know how big of an issue it is. And most of the times when they're completely full, it's at midnight when it's 19 cents, and people who really want to save money will wake up late and go charge. So I don't know how big of an issue it'll be, at least for the East Coast right now. In California, it's going to be a huge issue. And I'm glad I don't live there. But also I charge at home, so I deal with these issues very infrequently too. So as far to the right as possible, try and not block. And if you get to a site and you notice there's one of the ones that's on the side, and you can kind of pull in halfway maybe, and you're not blocking anything, to use that. I actually, a video I just put out, I found that scenario and I was blocking nothing. So I'm like, well, I'll do this so I'm not blocking a stall, and can be courteous to the other drivers. But then that's like the last thing. Just be like courteous to other people. Like think about other drivers when you're making a decision, and try and not just be oblivious.
So would they call the police on this guy? I don't know.
Hey,
Looks like a working job to me.
That perspective throws it off. I was inside the lines, so
I just watched the video. He was in the lines.
Yeah, I was in the lines. Yeah, no, it's kind of ironic though. Like everything Tyler said is 100% correct. Other than I no longer know how many Tesla owners are left leaning. But sorry, but yeah, I'll do the politics there. But no, like the site in Red Bluff. So Red Bluff is Northern California. This is an area where California is more like Utah or Idaho or Montana than it is like California. And I pull into a site, I think 12 or 16 stalls, and there's one Tesla owner there. The only person I saw the whole time. Everything else was a lifted Hummer and pickup truck. But I was in the rightmost stall, and I was still blocking 2 stalls because the configuration of it, they put the nose in stall at the end, and I didn't realize that. But so just kind of keep some attention to it. And then, yeah, the other issue is it's a matter of crowding in California. There's going to be some frayed nerves, I have to imagine, but luckily for CCS, we have a lot of other options to choose from. So it really does seem like this is almost that once you get out of the city, it's not really a problem anymore. Whether it's the Superchargers, non-Tesla, like EVs using the Superchargers or the CCS network, once you get out of the cities, the crowding really just drops. So just be mindful. And like I said, do what Tyler says, just kind of pay attention, start from the right if you're in a non-Tesla EV, and everybody can get along.
So this isn't acceptable?
Oh, I think that's perfectly acceptable.
They're very good places to park when you go to a movie theater, I've heard. Or if you just don't want to charge overnight at your hotel and just need a place to.
Well, I mean, they're all full, so they're only 90 kilowatt anyway.
It's maximizing the power. Actually, GM's press shot, the one they released, didn't do a whole lot because this doesn't. They've blocked the stall there with their own. I'm not even sure what the Silverado is doing. Whether there's a charger there.
Silverado is good. It's not blocking anything.
Native, yeah.
Is there even a Supercharger back there?
Yeah, they're on the rear. Silverado's rear left.
Yeah.
And then this guy in the corner seems to be. They're all leaving, so hopefully they find it. Walter, any last pearls of wisdom for Supercharger etiquette from the seat of a Cadillac Lyriq?
Yes, and I really appreciated Eric's video where he was talking about the feeling of stress because we're being forced to take 2 spaces just because of the logistics and how that creates a pall over the whole experience. And I agree that I would generally try to avoid that when possible. But I want to talk about physics because we have General Motors is not really known for small vehicles. What are going to be showing up here are Hummers, GMC Sierra EVs. Marcus just did a review of the Silverado, which gave it glowing reviews. And when Marcus gives something glowing review, I mean, he's basically the person who tipped Fisker into bankruptcy. And he did the opposite with the Silverado. So likely there's going to be a lot of those puppies get put on the road here pretty soon. He's a major influencer. And we were talking about General Motors getting close to unseating Ford as the number 2 position for EV sales domestically. But if you factor in Honda and Acura, it's likely already GM is in excess. So we've got a very large auto manufacturer putting cars on the road, plus almost a decade worth of bolts getting put into Supercharger circulation. But the sheer size of some of these cars that are showing up are, I fear, because I did a video prior to the opening of the Supercharger where I was charging my Cadillac on a V4 stall. And it was fine, as Tyler recommends. But prior to going there, I just pulled up to a V3 just to see what's up. And you got to a Cadillac's a big car, and you're doing this. There's going to be more than one person. It's just statistics. You got a big car and not a lot of space who's going to be freaking bumping those V3 stalls. and causing damage to the car and damage to the stall, to the dispenser. And I don't even know what it looks like inside a cab of a Silverado as I'm inching into a Tesla Supercharger stall that's designed for a car modeled for efficiency. That's gonna just knock that thing over like a cone, like an orange cone. It's gonna tip it over. So I guess be careful, because these things are delicate little flowers that are not designed for big GM vehicles showing up with 200 kilowatt hour packs that are sitting 6 feet off the ground with very little windshield and periphery visibility. So that's really what I'm concerned about. The hood length of the Cadillac is long, and in order to get the V3 dispenser's cable into the front driver's quarter panel charging dock, you got to get pretty darn close. And it also depends on the site engineering. And that's one thing I would caution people: be very careful. And if it's empty, the sideways thing stinks, but at least you're not going to damage any vehicle or supercharger dispenser if you're pulling in sideways. So anyway,
Yeah, it's the same for the Equinox
there you go.
too.
Equinox is a big car. I would venture a guess that the interior cabin of your Equinox is bigger than your Model S. Pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty big inside. It's very comfortable. But yeah, the front, I have, for the V3, I have to pull over the curb. I have to reach most of the V3s.
Which means you're inches, if not an inch away from the dispenser.
Very close to the dispenser.
Yeah, which, I mean, I actually feel like the Bolt EV, but this has always been its strength, right? Is that it's such a small car that you can really kind of squeeze in places you wouldn't normally. But I kind of feel like this is a Tesla problem, because it applies to the Cybertruck as well. Like the Cybertruck is a big honking piece of stainless steel, and I expect to see some Superchargers smashed if they haven't been already.
Yeah, I think that was a common theme with the Ford Access videos as well, early on with Magic Docks, which we should touch on again really briefly in the 3 minutes we have. But Ford F-150 Lightning, even the marquee is quite, long nose. So you're really, really having to get someone in those videos with the marquee vlog. Patrick was having Liv, guide him in, and you could only get so close, before it was really, really tight. And then you're stretching if you're not really thinking about it, you may be stretching that cable that leads onto the whole maintenance and service issues. So definitely some etiquette considerations there, but also, just from a service and respecting the equipment perspective. Let's jump into the comments quick. Etiquette at Superchargers: don't wear white after Labor Day, from Cecil. And Sky adds to that tan suits as well. I think President Obama would disagree. Remember when that was the days of political scandal, a tan suit? Good old days.
There was some. Do you see that other post that got the Google eyes?
Let's see.
First over-the-air updates for the Blazer EV.
Oh, there we go. Yep, just went out today. Okay. Well, anyone know what we're getting in that? Because as a Hyundai owner, I am completely
Improved
underwhelmed
charging
by
curve.
That's what I'm praying.
Okay, for Hyundais, it's typically a new Sounds of Nature or a different ambient cabin cover, so it's not quite such a big Christmas event for us. I want to touch really quickly on Magic Dock before we finish up, because that's the forgotten stepchild. It started it all more than a year ago, but has seemingly been abandoned, except it really hasn't. It's I was looking at the numbers in January. We were approaching 50 Magic Dock locations. When it started out last year, it was just the 12 in New York and then a couple in California. Now we're past 100 now. I think we may be up to as high as 110, 115 if the ChargeWay and PlugShare listings are reporting accurately to me. So, and it's easier now to count the states that they're not in than the ones they are. So you're getting Magic Docks still being pushed out there, and as part of the NEVI site. This is, although, you know, Tesla has only started building a few at the moment. There's one in Pennsylvania, one in Maine. But those are all going to have, as well as the credit card readers and payment screens, they're going to have Magic Dock as well, just so they can fulfill the CCS requirement. So it's not stopping, and some of these are in quite useful locations. I did a video today behind me in Utah with one of the stations in Moab. Well, before that was activated, there is a Magic Dock location, which was literally the only CCS option for probably 50, 60 miles in any direction. So they still have their place. I guess anyone can chime in on this because we only have a couple of minutes here. But what do you think the future for Magic Dock is as we still get these locations expanding and they are part of, you know, Tesla's NEVI initiative, which is at least 100 sites, you know, and expanding?
I'd love to ask a question because I saw a Brandon Flash video where he was doing a road trip and came across V4 dispensers that had Magic Docks that were not activated for use. And I as well came across a station that I did a review on that had Magic Dock embedded in the V4 dispensers, but they're not available for use. I don't know if other people are seeing similar V4 stalls where the Magic Docks are there, but they're not available for use. And I almost wonder if at some point Tesla's going to start doing software updates to open up more that are already pre-positioned and just start, you know, increasing the expansion of the network that way as well.
Maybe.
Oh, every V4 is according to what Sky says. So I didn't know that. So apparently that's the case.
Yes. Yeah. Every V4 has the Magic Dock, and like, so
Did not know that.
the one I went to in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is not available to non-authorized vehicles, but me as a Chevy driver, I was able to take it out and plug it in.
Yeah, that's the one I need to test that in Weed at the V4 in Weed, California, because it's open to us as GM now, but I didn't know if the Magic Dock was available. I just have one thought on it is I feel like this is a necessary thing for them to preserve. And kind of a question for both Tyler and Walter too, is even on an 80-degree day, only pulling 150 amps, my A to Z charger was notably warm, or the adapter was notably warm, not hot, but warm. And with 500 amp, I feel like that's going to maybe get hot to the point, especially during summer, that it's not easy to handle. We've seen Liv and Tyler mention that on the Mach-E vlog videos with some of their experiences on hot days. And to me, that's exactly why you would want a Magic Dock, is so you don't have to deal with it. If you have access issues, you don't have to deal with an adapter. If it's a hot day, you don't have to deal with an adapter. It just plugs directly back into the dispenser, rather than having to detach something that could be hot enough to scald, if not necessarily burn you.
And speaks to Walter's, you know, point about anyone with, you know, either nails or fiddly, you know, doesn't want to deal with faffing with the adapter on and off process. YouTubers, we should always think of ourselves and being able to just push up and pull them out.
How am I going to film?
No, it's very important.
Yeah.
Just take lessons from Walter in shot framing. He does a great job of that.
For what it's worth, when I used the V4, I did a full 10 to 80% charge test. It pulled 500 amps for 10 minutes, and the neither the handle nor the adapter were hot.
Okay.
So because I know that the cable has the immersion cooling. I don't know if that passes on to the adapter. I don't know anything about that. I would imagine it doesn't, but like I said, I did it, and the handle was literally cool, and the adapter was like slightly warm, but it wasn't hot. And
no wet towel trick.
No wet towel needed.
So many things we didn't touch upon that just reminded me of extension cables, which we won't even have time to touch, and the pending lawsuits and the back and forth Cybertruck we hit, the potential voltage pushing up for EGMP. All that stuff will have to wait for another day. Tyler from the Average EV channel, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your not only your GM adapter experiences, but your Equinox EV early ownership experiences. For anyone who was had their interest piqued in the vehicle, or just getting some good videos on a kind of friendly everyday level. The Average EV is the channel you want, so head over there. I'll link a bunch of videos after this goes live in the replay, so you can check all these out. But definitely go watch the videos, subscribe, and put Tyler's content on your radar. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Eric Way of the News Coolum channel has regular updates now, or at least pretty stuff on the adapters, but also the Northern California scene in terms of charging. So you're going to get some good stuff over there. And Mr. Walter Schultze at the Network Architect channel has not only doing his own updates, he now has people offering to take on new projects. There's people following the Loves. I will fail to remember the gentleman's name. Maybe you can remind me, Walter. He was doing the Loves updates.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. I have to
Alan.
Thank you, Yates, Mr. Yates.
Alan Yates. Yeah, I'll link all this down below. But you've got a lot of people now joining the army of updates for these budding networks. So if there's a network you want to follow, then Walter probably knows someone who'll track it for you. So thank you everybody for going over. Sorry we ran into what probably isn't quite our longest, but is getting close. We appreciate your time. Thank you for staying with us, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. Enjoy National Drive Electric Week. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.